And welcome back to, we are now at part 4 of this week's new comics, bitches! So, let us continue. Okay, so, we're kind of moving on to our big books of the week. Sometimes I start with them, sometimes I finish with them. So, one of the big major releases this week was Superior #7, the finale to Mark Millar and Lionel Yu. Lionel? I have no idea how to pronounce his first name. Mr. Yu. Let's just call him Mr. Yu. Mr. Francis Yu. Now, this brings a surprisingly sentimental end to this rather epic piece. You know, kind of Millar's kind of epic treatment of the Superman character, and his own, of course, kind of perverse and ragged take on it. You know, and then if nothing can be said about this book, it could be said at least he gave Superior a massive final villain to fight. You know, the series as a whole, you know, I think it kind of took a while to find its footing. But since it did, it's become much more interesting, and conversely, well, and also, I shouldn't say conversely, but also much more bizarre with each preceding issue. With the other young man, you know, with the monkey being, well, claiming to be the devil, and that, you know, that you have this moment where, you know, basically you've got, you know, he's, you know, this evil monkey. You never trust a monkey, okay? If you've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, you should know, never trust a monkey, okay? And believe me, I should know. I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark upwards of 400 times by now. So, okay. And that's start to finish. That's not just picking it up halfway through. It's my favorite movie ever. So we've got that character who is demolishing and killing and just absolutely destroying at will, only to basically have Simon essentially sell his soul to this creature, to this demon, so that he will become superior once again and go off and fight this massive threat. And, you know, thousands of innocents are dying, at least it seems like thousands, certainly hundreds. And really, he's the only one that can put a stop to it. So, you know, so he makes that sacrifice. It's like, okay, I will go to hell. But if I'm going, you know, if I'm going there, I'm going there because I need to save innocent people. So that's where the character of Simon Pooney, which is admittedly like one of the funniest names ever for a major comic character, or at least major in his own book. It's just, you know, that's some wonderful stuff there. Just the name in and of itself. And, you know, I like the final moments here between, you know, the would-be Lois Lane character and Simon. You know, and also those final moments where he is still superior. And it's just, there's a lot of really good stuff going on in this issue. It's, you know, I wasn't sure about how the whole demon thing was going to play out, but it played well. So I'm glad that ended up with something that was like, oh, okay, that's a good ending for that. So this was, you know, and, you know, again, his art is just, it's terrific. I love his stuff. When it's on. Again, he's an on and off kind of artist, but he's really spot on here. Most of the time, he's on. So I will, you know, no denying that. So I would say, you know, again, 4 to 4.5 out of 5. You know, so this just really, really good stuff. Glad this series. You know, the one thing though, I do have to say one thing, is that this series has been, or Millar's work kind of post-Kick-Ass. Now that he's left essentially major label writing, none of it has really I don't know if a lot of this will stand the test of time. It seems like everything that he's writing for movies now. And while that's fine and dandy, let's just see it as a movie. Let's not see the comic book first, so that we won't sit at the movie and say, well, that wasn't in, you know, the shit that was in the comic book, that's not in the movie. Like I felt almost all through Kick-Ass. That film. I mean, it was just like, okay, well, why the fuck did they change this so badly? Or Wanted. You know, it's like those works. Kick-Ass, Wanted, Superman, well, not so much Superman Red Son. I didn't really love that, but, you know, his work on the Ultimates. I mean, his work on the Ultimates got some really huge accolades very recently. It's like, you know, some of the best graphic novels of the last decade. So, and that's great stuff, believe me. The Ultimates that he did with Brian Hitch was tremendously good. You don't get much better than that as far as comics is concerned. So, anyway, that was 4 out of 5. Superior number 7. Finale. Moving on. Morning Glories number 15. I have a little bit of a weird feeling that Nick Spencer he's kind of entered into almost a little bit of, maybe a little bit of parody with the comparisons between Morning Glories and Lost, because that is, it's out there a lot. It's out there all the time. You hear them talking about, okay, well, it's, you know, this is essentially, it's like kind of a teenage, you know, high school version of Lost. And I think, you know, like this whole, there's a scene in here with, where Hunter and Zoe go into this bunker, and there are numbers that are eerily familiar to one of, you know, to the nerdy character, and it makes them all wiggy. So, I mean, to that, it was like, oh, this is really interesting here. It's kind of, you know, like I said, it seems that way. I don't think that it is, but if it's not, that's fine, and if it is, even better. But, you know, the whole issue, just flat out brilliant. I mean, it's great. Dense dialogue. Really great, dense dialogue. Wonderful storytelling. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. I mean, Spencer and Joe Eisma together, it really is, you know, they're becoming one of those teams. They're becoming one of those perfect marriage teams of writing and art. That's one of the reasons that this book is so good. If it didn't have Joe Eisma's art, it probably wouldn't be as good as it is. It would still probably be interesting, but it wouldn't be as gorgeous to look at. So, and again, if nothing else is clear about this book, and there's normally nothing really clear about the book, is that Zoe has some serious fucking issues, man. I mean, she really does. And the character of Maggie, being introduced in this book, I had to ask myself, when did Gertie from Runaways get into this book? Well, that's okay. I have to explain. There's a little bit of a private joke, and it's not even really private, and it's not even much of a joke, but it's just this little thing, because Eisma tweeted a character design that he said he was going to be using in the future, and it was the design of Maggie, and tweeted a picture of it, and I said, wow, it really looks like it looks like Gertrude from Runaways. And he tweeted back to me directly saying, that's exactly the look that I was going for. So, you know, it's a little thing between me and Joe, you know. Hey, Joe, how you doing? You know, anyway, but, I mean, god damn, this book is just fantastic. I mean, I could read this and reread it and reread it and reread it, and nothing is ever going to be clear. And that's one of the wonderful things about reading a book like this, is that I'm not necessarily comparing it to this kind of level, but for instance, when I read Watchmen, I almost every time I read it from start to finish, I can't stop it, and I find something new that I did not see before. Like, I remember the time when I actually discovered the whole issue where it's the, you know, basically it's the mirror issue of Watchmen. That's the kind of thing that I feel like I'm going to pick up from Morning Glories, is that there's going to be questions, and there's never really going to be everything answered. And I hope I actually kind of hope that that's the case. So, Morning Glories, number 15, 5 out of 5, absolutely brilliant. So, is one of the two great books of this week. Here's the other one. And ultimately, this is my pick of the week by a slight margin, but a margin nonetheless. You're probably seeing it coming already. I can see the look in your face. It's Batman #5. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, doing probably the best issue of this comic yet. I know that you guys are probably sick and fucking tired of me constantly singing the praises of Scott Snyder. And it would be really easy not to if the guy weren't so fucking awesome. However, I will grant you that this issue's greatness has more to do with the artwork of Greg Capullo than it does necessarily to Scott Snyder's. Now, if you've seen Comic News' review of this, and I hope that you do, it's his latest comic review of this week. If you go to his page and you'll see his review, he actually takes out the book and he shows it to you. Because one of the things that is amazing about this book, and is really its centerpiece, is the art. The whole book, Snyder brings his very formidable horror experience, his expertise to devise a really terrifying and extraordinarily disorienting issue of comics here. Again, these are all, the kind of disorientation that I usually talk about is me just being fucking lost. But there's none of that here. I'm not lost here. Batman's lost, but I'm not. I'm following what is going on here. I'm following what the story is. And what's so big about what Snyder is doing with Batman. Another part of it, because we've talked about the detective stuff, and him bringing that back is just an absolute fucking joy. But the fact that he has basically brought the mythology of Batman and the mythology of Gotham City itself, and now they're meeting head on. They are colliding. When Batman says, "This is my city," a lot of that's true. And that's something that Snyder also covered in his work with Jock and Francesco Francavilla on the entirety of his run that we now affectionately call the Black Mirror. Because Gotham is a reflection of not only its heroes, I should say, but its villains. And sometimes it's more so than the other. But Batman says, "This is my city, this is my story." But it is also the story of Gotham City. It's a lot of dead bodies got this city to where it is now. And part of that is on Batman. And he knows that. But he's not going to let that part of the story get away from him, because that's his whole tether to reality in this issue. And that's where Greg Capullo's art comes in so beautifully, is that he's telling a story from his own point of view, but he has a certain awareness at some point that he's probably drugged. But at the same time, he's going along for that ride, even though he doesn't want to. And you have this whole, the whole thing with, Batman's, one of his eyepieces being broken. You see his bare revealed eye. It's very creepy. It's very disorienting. But the thing that Capullo does here is he takes your 2 pages, okay, and then he goes like this. You normally read it right to left, and then he goes like this. You got to read it, down, up to down, and then all of a sudden we're doing like this. So we have turned the book all the way over. We're now reading it left to right, essentially, but that's part of it. That's part of the genius of this issue. This issue, again, an easy 5 out of 5. If I could maybe give it 6 out of 5, I would. This is a great issue of comics. It's simply brilliant. So again, that's it for this week. Start reading Scott Snyder, guys. If you're not, you're just losing out. And start reading Batman, because again, you're losing out. So, like it, love it, hate it, thumb it up, thumb it down, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Donnelly92274. Name spelled the same way as it is here. And I'm James Donnelly on Facebook, and you can find me at Tumblr at theshadowgallerycomics.tumblr.com. That's it for this week. The Shadow Gallery saying good night to y'all. Have a good one.